Hello. It's been a week. I had a week off actually, so I've been moving. I've been moving house. I've been moving offices as well. So I've been pretty busy. So I apologise for missing last week. Let me just check that all these streams are working here. I'll try and get the chat. I can even do a chat overlay. Okay. Yeah, looks good. So I've got this going out on YouTube, Twitter. I think. Oh, I'm not sure anyone watches this on Twitter. To be quite frank, seems to be more kind of a LinkedIn. Okay, I've got some eyeballs. Drop me a message on LinkedIn, and if you can, YouTube as well. Here we go. Hello, Chandra, Sharma. Facebook as well. I'm not convinced about LinkedIn or I'm actually logged into LinkedIn myself. I'm not seeing it. Let's refresh it. Boom, there I am in business. Okay, seems to be okay. Got my merch on. You may have noticed my Moblox t-shirt here. So don't forget to go to moblox.com and register their sign up. So I'm doing a weekly newsletter. Just me basically talking to a very select audience at the moment, a couple hundred people. Just some thoughts, observations. I've got a personal newsletter. Try and crank it out on Fridays. That's tomorrow. So nobody else is getting that. You're only getting that if you're signed up to moblox.com. And the idea there to start building a community, also building some software. So we want to start asking the target audience, target members of Moblox, which are people running small businesses, people starting businesses. As matter, it could be an SME, up to 10, 15 employees perhaps. And we want to ask you what you think of some of our designs. So we're creating clickable prototypes. So we'll probably pick about 10, 15, even 20 people to go and have a look at that and start clicking on them and providing some feedback as well. So I've been sort of moving, and it's been quite an interesting week where we're setting up the company as a B Corp, and also being on the board of various things. The sort of sustainability agenda, and especially net zero, keeps coming up. I keep hearing about net zero, and I keep also hearing about it in relation to small businesses. So, and it's one thing I'm trying to square it in my head, because a lot of large companies, they've got an agenda. There are sort of regulators and associations that kind of push them along. There's reasons to be sustainable, reasons to be net zero. But I think small businesses, people are putting out fires. They're trying to keep the lights on, and I'm always interested to know how high upon your agenda net zero is. So I think your customers increasingly wanting to be sustainable, wanting the provenance of your business and how it's put together and how you do things and your culture and you even. So I think they're expecting you to be sustainable and hopefully working towards net zero. Whether you can or not remains to be seen. And also, it's going to be a question of access to finance, institutional funding. Are people going to start venture capital even? Their investors, the limited partners who invest in these funds, invest in small businesses, be it debt or be it equity. Are they going to start asking questions in due diligence? So they're going to start pushing small businesses to be thinking about net zero, which means time, energy, resource, and just headspace. I mean, I know some farmers actually, and they grow got chicken, they grow chickens, they be chickens, got potatoes and wheat. I think I've stopped doing wheat now, potatoes. And the government's sort of pushing them to stop doing anything really in terms of farming and just grow bushes and flowers that are for the benefit, I think, of I think it's butterflies and maybe bees, which is not a bad thing, but they're going to stop farming, and that's because of farming is not particularly great for the environment in terms of its carbon footprint. So they're pushing them in that way, and I wonder if down the line we're going to have some kind of food security crisis, and it all goes in the opposite direction. So we may end up with sort of unintended consequences. But I'm interested to know what you think about, if you're running a small business. Is this something you think about? Do you wake up in the morning and think about, right, I've got to sell that, I've got to get that invoice paid, I've got to deliver that product or service. How am I going to look after the kids this over the next 6 to 9 weeks? or are you thinking about net zero and the future of the planet, and what impact what you do or business generally may have on the future of your children, your local, and even the global environment? I don't know. Let me know. I'd be quite interested to know about that, because I think, given that the 60% of the economy, I think it's half the economy in terms of GDP, 60% in terms of private sector employment, are small businesses under 50 employees. Unless we are embracing this agenda, then it's not going to get very far, is it? So I've been to the movie. I've moved to London, so I'm kind of moving between London and up north now. The van is coming on. It's getting there now. So I'm soon going to be living in lay-bys on the road. So I'm planning to do a bit of a trip around the UK. So probably all the way from Scotland all the way down to get invited to Bournemouth. It's not a bad thing. The weather holds up. Cornwall as well. So probably do the whole UK. And I'm going to sort of be a roaming podcast, meeting small businesses, talking to you, doing this kind of thing, but face to face in a van on a podcast, recorded with a camera as well. So if you're interested in that, let me know as well. So let's go on to Q&A. So one thing that a chap that I know who's been working on something with me, he asked me last week about chattel mortgages or chattel finance. Now, as a descendant of slaves, and I'm based in Barbados, they're called chattel houses, and this is a bit of history. So a chattel house, if you've ever been to Barbados or places like Jamaica, you'll see these little wooden houses, and they kind of sit on bricks or breeze blocks, and you can literally pick them up and you can move them. So if you had to move work, or you were told to move back in those days, you can literally pick up your house, put it on a truck, and you can move it. And a chattel is a movable asset, essentially, and that's what they're called, chattel houses. Now, a lot of people, if you're a small business, and there'll be a whole raft of people who will be telling you about weird and wonderful ways in which they can help you to, raise finance, everything from, mortgages to all sorts of weird and wonderful ways of debt to equity, and equity with funny terms. And this was the new one to me. And I think when I looked at it, it became a lot more asset finance. And the thing about asset finances, and no matter what someone tells you, the chattel mortgages, for example, or chattel finance, is that if you've got a big clunky piece of machinery that's got a second-hand value, it's got a market value. Let's pick some numbers. So it's worth, I don't know, 50 grand when you bought it, and a couple of years later, it's worth maybe 25. And there are people out there that will pay that for it. Either you can advertise it somewhere, even on eBay. That's got an asset. It's got some value, and you can actually leverage that and borrow against it, just like you can against a house. Question is how much can you borrow? How much will they give you against it? And what are they going to charge you for it? It can be quite sort of complicated in some ways, and also very, very expensive. Now, if you're going down to chattels, like things like your tools, stuff lying around your workshop, drills or whatever it might be, then you start to get to the point where it's more like a pawn shop, to be quite frank. Is they're not really enough there to finance, and what you'll find is a lot of these companies is and these are the less reputable ones, clearly. What they're really interested in are the fees. So it's the fees up front if you've taken out that finance. They're always going to protect their backside, because if your drill's worth 50 quid, they'll give you £10 against it, but they'll charge you £5 for the pleasure. So be very, very careful about the fee structures of these things, and make sure that it's actually worth your while, because otherwise you can find these kind of financing schemes are very, very expensive. If you're going to look at chattel mortgages, or whatever the hell they're called, or asset financing, you want to start from a position where you have an asset that's worth financing. And that could be even a car, something that you've paid off maybe over the years. And that's a great way of releasing the sort of value, the capital that's locked up in your business, in your balance sheet. As long as the payment terms aren't too draconian. And what you want to make sure, the last thing I'll say on this is, make sure that when you look at those payment terms, make sure there isn't some hair trigger in there. If you wake up late on a Tuesday for some reason, they can take that asset off you. You make a late payment, or one late payment, and some of the more reputable players, they have pretty standard terms. They're fine, but some people, they call it in the US. I used to work in the hedge fund business, and they call it loan to own. So the idea is, it's not to loan you the money and get the interest and the principal back. The idea of the loan is to take the asset off you, because they know they can make quite a bit of money out of taking it off you quite legally and then flogging it. So be very careful about asset financing. Make sure that it's a reputable provider and you know what you're getting into, and that the terms make sense for you and your business now and also in the future. See questions coming in now. I've got another one here. Someone asked me during the week as well, which I'm going to come back to. So LinkedIn is working. Has Chandra, Paul, Ryan, come to Devon? Yeah, I think Devon's probably going to be. I'm probably going to do. I love Cornwall, so I'm probably going to do Cornwall, Devon, Bournemouth, the whole kind of south coast, and come all the way along. Could be quite a long tour actually, but the idea is to try and just when I'm down these places, don't ignore me. Come and get involved. I might try and get on the local radio station, and we're going to talk about small businesses, bouncing back, and also the way in which you can use and embrace technology as well. So that's what I'm going to be talking about, not just about the weather. So another question someone asked during the week was. I've been through this as well. I'm actually going through it now in some ways. Of Moblox is building teams. So when you're starting out and you sort of bring people on, do you just bring on who's available and kind of worry about fixing your team later? Now that's dangerous. So it can be really hard. It can be. Angela asked me this on LinkedIn in a DM. So it can be hard because you often want to move quickly. You don't have got a huge amount of resource. There may be people. I get asked this question quite a lot. Maybe people who are available to you. They might know a bit about marketing. Someone that's a bit about product. They've worked at a startup before, or maybe a startup in your sector before, and they're available. And you want to get them involved. You want to get on with it. But the point is, it's like if you've been to university. So my dog's barking now. You've been to university. You'll spend the first week making all these great friends for life. You spend the next 3 years trying to avoid them. So you've got to be careful that when you're putting a team together, insofar as you possibly can, even it can be quite hard finding ways to incentivize or pay people, is try and hire people as if you could pay them the full market rate, and have a process and ask questions and do some due diligence and make sure they actually know what they're talking about, and then they can actually do the job, especially if it's someone you know, or it's someone that's connected to someone because that can be really, really awkward when a few months down the line you have to ask them to kind of leave. So do the work, have a process, and try and recruit people as professionally as you possibly can. Now, you'll get to a point where they're going to say, okay, I think you're great for the job actually. And they go, well, I want this, and you can't afford it. And that's when you get into having to be creative about compensation, about, whether what you pay them, when you pay them. If you've got a company or building, you're going to sell it, and maybe you can provide them some kind of upside in the equity or some kind of options, whatever it might be. That doesn't work if you're not building a business to sell, because how do they ever get out of it? So you're thinking about profit shares, commissions, especially if it's sales related or even not sales related, based on deliverables. A whole profit in the business, depending how involved they are. So just try and be creative, but it can be soul destroying having a team of 5 people that you think are great on day one, and by day 42, you realize that, I wouldn't have hired these people. They're really nice, but then it's not the right people for this job. And now I'm going to have to ask them to leave, and it's really awkward. And maybe you haven't done that before. It can be quite soul destroying. You have to go through that process, and you are going to, in many cases, it's just the way it works on both sides of the equation, both for employees and people that are trying to employ people. You're going to kiss a few frogs. And you may have a revolving door for quite some time. And when you find people that really can do the job well, and they fit your culture, which is quite important, and they deliver, and hang on to them for dear life and look after them and make sure that your aspirations and our aspirations are aligned, because continually recruiting people because you think it, or even worse, actually, hanging on to people because you realize they're not right, and the wheels are falling off slowly, but you're too busy. I can't bear going through another recruitment process. And sure, if I take them out for lunch and give them a bit of a pep talk, they'll come around. They'll begin to understand what I need from them. You'll know pretty soon in your heart of hearts that it's not working out, and you need to sort of face up to that fact and make some changes pretty quickly. Right, let's have a look at the questions in here. What have we got? Oh, there's one here. Ryan McGee. I hope you can see this on the screen. As a small business, we try to be purpose-driven, so planet impact comes within that. That's what we were saying earlier. Hardly a top priority, though, as you say. You've got to keep the lights on, and this is, I think this is going to be a real ongoing discussion between small businesses and the powers that be, because unless small businesses really sort of embrace this, it's going to be very, very hard to move the dial. And you can't sort of force them to do it, because small businesses, they're quite hard to communicate with in many ways, and they can push back quite easily. So I think this is going to be driven by, I think there's going to be schools of thought where people, where you are maybe it's important to you, it's really important to you, and it should be, and you want to be sustainable and you want to make a difference and you build your business around that. But there are lots of people that, not that they don't want to, because we've got children, we've got a planet, they're living on the same planet. It's the point of, you just don't have the time or the resources. Quick question here from Chandra Sharma. Where did the name Moblox come from? I'm not going to give too much away because that'll give away the game. But so it's kind of a combination of sort of building blocks and mobile and telecoms and telecommunication and connectivity. It's kind of a combination of different things. It's kind of like building blocks, and it's about small businesses as well. So it's actually a domain name I bought quite a long time ago, actually. Believe it or not, it cost me a fortune. So I'm glad I can use it. I'll get some value out of it. But it's a name I've quite liked for quite a long time. I like the X in it. I like the number of syllables in it. It kind of works. So I've now got to the point where I've even got T-shirts and yes, branding. Getting baseball caps tomorrow. So sadly, this is all I'm going to wear from now on. I think my partner Nicola is going to start to hate that name. That's all I'm going to be wearing, no matter where we go, posh restaurant or not. Right, who we got here? See people here. Simon here. He's saying that they are. We aim for 2 times negative. That's amazing. You don't often hear that. Most people are, they're kind of focusing on we want to be net zero, but people are now actually it's going the other way, actually sucking carbon out of the atmosphere, wherever it may be, the planet. And that's an amazing place to be. And a lot of people, I did that a former business, we were kind of net zero, and it's great to see people that are actually going, beyond that and actually thinking slightly out of the box. And I think that this is increasingly going to become more and more important to your end customers. I don't care what size the business is. So to touch about on the asset finance as well. So I'm finding that high street lenders are less willing to raise asset finance. So the thing about finances, especially debt finances, and is that essentially it's about risk. Now that might sound obvious. Now a lot of people, myself included, have been there. You get very upset when you do all the work and you think you've got a great business, and you go and talk to somebody who's got the money and you're looking for debt finance. And I've done, mortgage debt, mezzanine debt, leveraged buyout debt, um, venture debt, which is kind of in the middle of debt and equity. They'll get a bit of equity or some options to compensate them for the additional risk they're taking. And the point is this: is that it often is the computer says no. And I always say, and I'll probably keep repeating myself on these live chats, is don't try and push a round peg through a square hole. The point is that these debt providers, they have a model and they have a particular kind of deal that works for them. And if you don't quite fit into that you're a round peg that goes in that round hole, you're going to find it very hard to convert that financing. Now, don't take it personally. And it can be super frustrating, especially doing all the work on it. You've just got to make sure that you understand what kind of debt, what kind of finance you're trying to secure. You understand how you go about it. You understand what they're looking for, and you try and position and package your business or the asset, whatever you're trying to buy or finance, in a way which is most likely to be acceptable to that particular provider. Now, it might sound quite obvious, but you'd be surprised at how many people just think that, oh, I can sell it to them. Now, in equity, like giving shares away for finance, investment, venture angels, you are selling a bit of a dream, you are selling a bit of an opportunity. Debt and credit are quite different. They want the money back, want to make sure you can pay it. And it's just like getting a mortgage on a house. And if you're thinking about debt, think about mortgages on houses. Can you afford the mortgage? Have you enough equity? How much are they putting in? If it all goes wrong, can they take it off you and sell it in a fire sale and get their money back? That's how they look at it. So don't take it personally. It's just the name of the game. One here from Mike. Mike's very busy on the questions here, Mike. So Mike again said, "Our reading." This question here: Our reading history has dramatically impacted COVID. We make bespoke shop furniture. Yeah, so I can imagine that. Yeah, you've been hit quite hard. And I don't want to sound generic, right? Because I know you probably all this, but some people just haven't quite grasped yet. Sometimes is that I think that the world has changed for good. And Mike, we're not going back to 2019. If you're making bespoke shop furniture, you've got a shop. It doesn't matter what you do really these days. you can't now rely on somebody walking past wherever it is you happen to be and looking in the window, getting a bit excited and walking through the door. You've got to start thinking about where is my market and how do I reach it? And you've got to start using technology and sales automation or just use technology that's out there to reach those customers. Because it's not going to go back to the way it was. I think we've seen 10 years of online retail growth in about 1 year, 2 years, maybe 18 months. So that's something people haven't got. And I think the high street, the acceleration of the how do I put it? The gutting of our high streets is upon us. I think we're going to see that happen even faster. So it's really important we reinvent them. It's really important that I think they become more experiential. They become more local. You add more value. You're providing services. I always say if you are literally providing the average service to the average customer at the average price in the average way, you're not going to make it. The big boys are going to come along and they're going to eat your lunch. Right, let's go on to another question here. I'm trying to rattle through these, right? Ryan, how do you codify company culture and fit? Good question. So you can to some extent codify it, and I think that is a question of understanding what your culture is and writing it down. And that can be now people confuse sometimes culture and branding and logos. So I've just been through the process with Moblox and the culture, especially in small businesses. It obviously starts with you and who you are, and maybe your co-founders or your early team. But the minute you put two humans in a room, or at least they're trying to work together, you end up with some kind of culture. So it's your responsibility in some ways to try and mold that culture and make sure that it fits you, the business, the community, the stakeholders, obviously, but especially the target, the end customers as well. Because the days are gone now where you could use some clever advertising to sort of smooth over some nonsense in your business that it wasn't doing things the way it should be, it wasn't treating its stakeholders the way it should be, and actually its product wasn't that great, but the advertising was fantastic. And then when people had paid for it, did they realize that it was rubbish? Those days are over, man. People can see through it. They can find out. We have lots of people now who spend a lot of time online writing reviews about you and your business and the way in which you operate, even the way in which you look after your employees. So you got to think about how am I more authentic? How do I communicate that? Now, when you're thinking about your brand and your logo, think about who is my business as a person. And if I met this person, how would they speak, your tone of voice? How would they look? Maybe your design, your UX, your branding. What would they wear? Merch, whatever it might be. So think of it as a person in many ways and try and really, really go into huge detail about who that person is, exactly all those facets of almost of a human. And then your culture is not quite the same thing. Your culture is very much about what it's like to be your business, what it's like to work for your business, what it's like to be a customer, what are the core themes. And I've been through several branding how do I put this systems. One was the branding onion, so it was in the middle. What's the core purpose of the business? And it kind of worked out. Another one was brand pillars. There were like 5 pillars. What are the 5 pillars of your brand? What is it? What are they? And how does your business sit on top of that? And often you see these things, pasted onto a wall in the office. We actually had that in our office on the wall. So how does that? If you had sort of 5 or 6 words, what would they be to explain to almost everybody who you are, who your business is, and how you operate? So you can codify it. The danger is I think especially in young businesses that you might start with something, but it shouldn't change massively because you understand what it should be, but it may evolve over time. So I'm going to be sort of carved into stone. Think about it and keep coming back to it. But it is something you should kind of write down at some point, especially if you're starting to recruit people as well. Because when you recruit people, they need to understand when you onboard them, what is the culture, what is the brand, how do you operate, how do things work. So and even in small companies, I will still write it down. I've got a fan going in. One sec. I'm going to keep going. Paul Keating. Question of the moment. Am I buying the dip? Not really a small business question, this is it? Yes, is the answer to that. So I I look at kind of all assets really. So be it equities or crypto or property, whatever it might be. Even talking to a friend of mine today, has got a US based healthcare hedge fund. So you want some exposure to that growth potential because that's potentially exponential in terms of what they're doing with genomics, things like that. So I look at everything. So I kind of try and play in all of it. Not a huge player in property. I keep getting asked that quite a lot. I'm just not. So yeah, I do dabble in it. I'm sort of I try and get my head around NFTs and the kind of social tokens. I'm more interested in DeFi, which is decentralized finance for those, which means that one day, maybe not for startups, but you've got a company with some assets and some cash flow. You can raise finance from essentially software rather than someone sitting behind a computer saying yes or no. I think that the future's not clear yet, but there's definitely something in crypto. I'm not going to talk about Binance, but most people don't know what the hell we're talking about. LinkedIn user down here. Piers, I think that funding houses should be more lenient for companies that are going through a transition of expansion, especially at these times. Paul, I'm not quite sure I fully understand that question. I want to add a bit more to it. I'm trying to work out why. You talk about property. I guess you're not talking about a company funding your personal house because that'd be some kind of a benefit in kind. It'd be taxable. You're on about funding properties, a property development or a property management or portfolio business. So let me know. You got anything else to say on that? Scrolling through these here. There's one here actually. So the high street is something which comes up a lot, and I get asked about this. I think it's really hard. So I grew up in a small Lancashire town where the high street was it was everything really. That's where you shopped, and very quickly they built these kind of out of town shopping centres, and they disappeared. And I haven't really recovered, to be quite honest with you. And you see when I keep going home that there are more and more small local businesses that are shuttered up, and there are larger retailers that have lots of them. Literally, there's one now. I can think about my old hometown where I can see a new big development, and I know what it's going to be. It's going to be an Aldi or something. Now, what's interesting though is my mum, whenever I go home, when she talks about she's going to cook me, I'll cook you something, and then whatever it is, she's always quite happy that she's gone and bought the meat or whatever it might be from a local butcher, and he's delivered it, and he's done a great job. He's done a great job of looking after her, saving her from going down, having to traipse down to the shops. So mum's she's getting on a bit now. Won't mind me saying that, and it's a service that matters, and I think that's where the high street needs to go. Is that I think increasingly, you're just not going to fill all of those empty units. So it's got to be a combination of a new kind of use in terms of whether it becomes resi or not. But I'm still a big believer in. If you look at things like Nextdoor in the US, which is it's like a more localized version of Facebook. I'm still a big believer in that. I think that the next wave is going to be more personal. It's going to be more local, and I think that people are getting a bit, I'm generalizing now, but people are getting a bit tired about these vast, global platforms where you're just another number. No one really cares. You're just a bit of data that someone can throw some advertising at, and they can earn some revenue out of you. I think that the local, going back to the question is here, what is the experiential? It's creating more value for a target customer. It's creating more value than they're getting from sitting at home ordering stuff online from the big players. Yes, it turns up on time. Yes, it's great, and you can't compete with that. So there's no point really to some extent. So it's about adding more value, understanding your customers, building a better relationship with your customers. The one thing that large companies are good at, because they use automation, they use technology, and small businesses don't tend to, is building and maintaining relationships. It's retaining customers, not just acquiring customers. And I'm always amazed at how small businesses, always amazing with this, they're very transactional. This might be because it's just, there are only so many hours in the day, but you'll have a customer, a client, I think I'm generalizing again, but you'll sell them something, you'll deliver a service. Let's take I've got a gardener basically up north. He'll come and cut the grass, and that's it. I won't hear from him again. He might turn up in 2 weeks. I don't know. Before I know, he could have emigrated. I have no idea whatsoever. Why doesn't he keep in touch? Why doesn't he say, how's it going? Anything else I can do? Do you want to send me a picture? I've got some weeds that popped up actually. Oh, send me a picture. We'll have a look. Build a relationship. Maintain that relationship. Customers that stay are number one. Customers that recommend you to other customers are the number two, the best form of marketing. So just think about that. Think about try and add more value for that local customer, and try, when they come to your shop or your whatever you've got locally, and they come in, they feel as though they're getting some value from you, that you care about them, and they actually matter to you. Unlike the big boys, they don't care. You're just data. Henrik Pelzer, good question here. Events. I've been through this today because I do quite a few speaking events around, and I've done sort of conferences. I try not to do MCs, but I speak at events, and I get asked to sort of do various things from diversity to small business, and a lot of them are the kind of marketing events. And I haven't done one of these in person now. I think I did one between the lockdowns in London, where literally it was all sort of like you followed a line up to the podium, you did your piece in front of the camera, and then no one touched you. They were spraying you with a Dettol, whatever the hell it was, and off you went. I couldn't quite see the point of making all, just so you can have their background and their stage. I haven't done one for 2 years in person. And I can just see now a few sort of bookings coming through where people are tentatively trying to organize these things. And there's some guys who, the Festival of Enterprise and these student SME Live, they've been sort of had to pivot into virtual events. I still think people like to get together. So there's no way in a million years is this the end of live events. I put a team together, Moblox. It's great. We work well together. It's completely different when we're all in the same room. That's what you want. You want the interaction. You want to meet people. I know it's a flipping nightmare at the minute, and this COVID is not going away fast. I know people that double jabbed, pretty ill. I know people that aren't vaccinated, they're getting really ill. So it's not going away in a hurry. But I think that live events will come back. I think what you're going to see though is more of a mix of the two. So the beauty of anything you do now, whether you're live, whether you're local, whatever it is think about your audience, think about your content, your product, that investment, that capital you put into your business. How do you leverage it? How do you sort of use what you've invested, the time, effort, energy, money, to access as many customers as possible? And again, that's using technology. That's using, you can have a virtual event as well as your physical event. Whereas before they were either physical or they were virtual, and they weren't that good, the ones in the middle. And now opportunity to change the game and have something which is, yes, physical for those that can make it, and virtual for those that can't or don't want to. And that means you can quadruple your audience for the same investment. Right, LinkedIn user, about the house. Let's come back to you. So to elaborate more, Piers, this is about the house and funding it. Regarding funding houses being more lenient, like my company, I'm going through that transition of expansion and growth where I'm securing great opportunities. I still don't get it. So again, this is, I said it earlier, if you're trying to fund something, right, there are boxes, there are holes, there's square hole, round hole, an octagonal hole, and you've got to decide, there's some wiggle room. You might have to just about force a round one through an octagonal one if you push hard enough. But you've got to work out what is I'm trying to finance, and what kind of people should I be talking to. Now, British Business Bank, actually, it's a bit lost now in the COVID stuff, but if you go on the website, there's a 6 questions tool you can use. That you answer 6 questions: what you want, how do you want it, what sector you're in, how much you want, that kind of thing, and it tells you where you best go and secure in that finance. So if you're looking at funding houses, I don't quite know what for. It might be as investment portfolio or whatever. That's typically going to be a mixture of debt and equity. If it's development, it might be debt equity, development finance, mezzanine finance. You've got to package that and take it to the right kind of lender, and then see if you fit into their credit risk box. If you don't, you can sell it to some extent. It's quite hard. Going to move on to the next one. So, and it can be timing. It can be your business. They'll probably tell you and give you feedback. And the best thing to do is go away and try and correct that, and then go again. There's no point kind of just screaming into the ether that they won't give you the money, because they don't care. They've got enough deal flow. You've got to try and mold your business and your opportunity to fit those boxes. But don't stress yourself out trying to push these round pegs through square holes. And if you're not quite ready and you keep getting the same feedback, then listen to it and do something about it, because otherwise you're just gonna drive yourself bonkers. Let's go on to Cherise here. What grants, I love talking about grants, if any, are available to small businesses? And are there any that you know of which are focused on assisting those underrepresented, diverse businesses? Well, the honest answer is no, really. So there will be small local grants. In terms of a very large scheme that's throwing a lot of money, that is, that they don't want back, underrepresented founders or diverse businesses. There aren't many of them. And the thing about grants is this: I've been involved in lots of various tech companies, and we've raised money that are, grants, Innovate UK government loans. We got an offer for £800,000. One of them didn't actually take it in the end. We crowdfunded it. I think about grants is that grants normally they come from a grant giving entity, an organization, and it might be usually the kind of third sector, government, charity, foundations. Sometimes you might get challenge prizes in the private sector, like the X Prize. They might provide a grant to help you invest in something, but you usually got to deliver something there and prove that you've actually done something different. But getting back to the point, when you apply for a grant, they're quite specific. They're going to say, we will give you this money on the basis that you are doing this, or that you will do this. So number one, it can be just as painful raising or securing grant money as it can be venture capital or angel investment. It can be just as many presentations, just as much sort of heartache, taking just as much time, and can take up just as much as your energy and sap the life out of you as it can do in private sector money. And even when you get the money, you might find that, hang on a minute, it comes with a whole raft of regulations and rules about what you can do with it, when you've got to do it by, when you can apply a game, when you can get the money. It might come in tranches. So be wary of grants generally. Make sure you know what you're getting into, and make sure that what you're trying to do fits the bill. It's a bit like financing again, round peg, square hole. Make sure you're pushing a round peg through a round hole. And in terms of your, a diverse founder, underrepresented founders, there are people that are, might help you locally sometimes, but in terms of government schemes, that level, there aren't. Now, what there are increasingly are funds which have been established to support underrepresented founders. Now, they're not grants; they want their money back. There might be lenders, particularly on the equity and the venture capital side of things as well. So, yeah, I wouldn't rely on grants to build a business. Think about grants within charity. You ever been involved in the charitable sector? I have. You get grants, you get funding streams, fantastic. And then for some reason, on a Tuesday, they decide that, we're not doing that anymore. Or the money dries up, or someone changes their mind. And then, for the best will in the world, no matter how hard you've worked or what you've delivered, you're done. You're toast. You're out of business. Your charity is over. And also, last thing I say about grants is often you'll find with grants, they tend to be available to third sector enterprises, not for-profit enterprises as well. Let's keep going down here. Whoa. Cedric Amoa, hope I said that right. Piers, how does an individual with years of extensive experience set up their own consultancy business in data analytics on cloud infrastructure such as Microsoft Azure? So for those of you who don't understand what Azure is, it's a cloud platform, a bit like Amazon AWS. If you don't know what Amazon AWS is, then most of the large websites and even the banks run on these cloud platforms. They don't own their own infrastructure. They basically rent it on a subscription model for the likes of Amazon or Microsoft. How do you acquire that first client? Should one create a SaaS solution for report? Okay. So let's try and break this down. So actually, the COO of my new business, Moblox, he actually, until quite recently, because he's joining my business, ran an Azure practice in a quite a reasonably large mid-market managed service provider. And I remember I was in this game successfully to some extent, not to some extent as well. And I remember one of the guys that we had a data center, we had infrastructure, we had a government infrastructure, we had our own infrastructure. And there's a chap there, I can't remember his name now, and he said to me, I don't know why you're building that. Because in 10 years' time, there'll be no point. You're just going to use public cloud infrastructure that's put together by large players like Amazon or Microsoft or even the government. And you're just going to use their infrastructure, and it's going to be hugely scalable. And make no economic sense building your own. And he was right, basically. Um, I can't get away from that. He basically built a business advising companies on how to use this was actually Azure, which you're talking about, these public cloud platforms. Now, the good news for you is that back in not too long ago, and this is one of the reasons about when I'm building Moblox, small companies, most don't understand the technology options because it's too flipping complicated. Despite this huge explosion of software as a service that should be used by all small businesses, the days of having a local expert that will tell you what to do and help you have gone because the cloud's killed it. They can earn 30 quid a month now. What the hell can they earn out of that in terms of commission? So the beauty is that the infrastructure play has been separated from the consultancy and the understanding of how you best use infrastructure, or how that business, best use and deploys infrastructure and creates the most value out of it. And that's the great thing for you is that as long as you understand the infrastructure, the customer doesn't care. They don't, unless there's some kind of particular, I don't know, data sovereignty or security issue, perhaps. They don't care whether it's on AWS, whether it's on Microsoft Azure or any other platform, to be quite frank. What they care about is the solution working for their business and helping them be more successful. And that's where you come in. So you don't need to worry about the platform. You need to worry about the service you're selling. And like any service vendor, the hardest thing is getting the first few reference customers. That's what you need to work on. But the key is just showing you're expert in understanding their business, the platform, and how you leverage the platform to make their business or them personally, depending how big their business is, more successful. So it's a fantastic opportunity. Now, there are a lot of people doing it. And a lot of people don't know what they're talking about because it is quite complicated and it moves quite quickly. So the key about getting a reference customers is starting reasonably small, because it's going to be very, very hard to sell that technology or service into very large companies. Start reasonably small and kind of build up from there, but really become the expert and try and find a particular niche as well. Is a way of don't try and be jack of all trades, master of none. Try and find a particular niche where, okay, I know this, you might expand eventually, but I know this particular niche, it might be, I don't know, Azure has lots of security and cyber protection built in. So understanding that and helping people understand their options, so that what you're saying is, yes, I can get you a platform to host your business on, your website, your whatever it might be, but actually I can explain to you why it's secure and how you can best look after your customer data, but built, actually within the service. Someone else will usually try and sell them and have other stuff across the top. So try and find a niche where you can add the most value, prove that, and get those reference customers. Don't give it away for free because then you're kidding yourself. Make them pay for it, and then from there you can build out from there. I hope that was helpful. Peers, how do I set up a call with you? You can't. That's why I'm doing these. If I was doing calls, I'd never get out of this dark cupboard, would I? So I try and do these to try and share the love and try and put something out there. If you get me on LinkedIn a good day, lots of messages, I might respond. Not that I don't want to. I just get so many messages. So I'm trying to, if you can get on here, this is in the Zoom. Actually, if you're trying to get on here and ask a question, then I'll try and answer it, actually. And they don't care what it is, actually. I've had some people ask me some pretty tricky questions, some personal questions too. Hi, Piers. What's up? Good. Thanks. Is it Ion McKinney? Right. Greg Stockton. Hey, mate. Coming in from Dubai. Cool. Um, what are your views on having a proper financial advisor versus an AI online platform? Um, if you can find an AI online platform, as you call it, that's as good as a proper financial advisor, then you're doing very, very well because they're not quite there yet. There's no such thing as AI yet. I think people are kidding themselves. And it's something we need to, we all need to understand is that the explosion of technology that we can all use in our businesses is happening, and that technology is going to start to evolve exponentially. And from now it's been linear, but it's going to take off. And AI, so there's two types of AI. There's kind of specific AI where it's very good at doing one thing. So I don't know, playing Go or chess. Even that might be machine learning. I'm not quite sure. And then there's general AI. General AI is Terminator, something that can think for itself and wakes up one morning and thinks these humans are a pain. We need to get rid of them, and they do. The AI is the kind of the dystopian future that people often refer to. Now, machine learning is where you have you basically have a data set, and you have it's machine learning sort of technology. Basically, you can look at that data set and it can learn and gain insights from that. And the more data you give it, the more it learns, the more it can see insights and analyze data in a speed and in ways in which the human mind just can't keep up with. So we're a long way from AI. We're a long way from even something passing the Turing test. We're getting there where you can't tell whether you're talking to an artificial intelligence or not. So we're kind of getting there. But having an AI where you can sit in front of it and it can give you financial advice and taking in all the data about you, your business, the world around you, the stakeholders, the global markets, economies, not quite there yet. You might find something that's very specific where you can plug in data about your business. They might be able to tell you what the best type of debt finance you can raise. That's more machine learning, I would say, than real AI. So general AI, we're not there yet. We could be 5 years away, could be 50 years away, but it is coming. I don't read these questions first. So there's one from HS. Hi, Piers. Hope you're well. Thank you. Reasonably good. Although I'm quite hot in here, I've got this fan blowing in the back of my head here. I'm the founder of a small retail startup of personal luxury goods. Okay. Actually, met a guy this week who does expensive perfume. He gave me some aftershave. I'm currently forming an advisory board. Generally, what would the best way to recruit people from outside of my network to the advisory board? So you've got to ask yourself a couple of questions. One is, why are you putting together an advisory board? And what's the purpose of it? No point just doing it for the hell of it. Often people often approach me and say, Piers, how do I find a co-founder? I'm kind of like, well, why do you want a co-founder? I don't know. I think it'd be good to have a co-founder. No. You start again. You don't just do these things because it's like a tick box in some book you've read. So having an advisory board, usually, if you have an advisory board, you need to do it properly. I would say is have a proper relationship, formalize it. You don't always have to pay them. I think in some ways paying people, even a small amount, creates a different relationship with them. It's a contractual relationship. You've got a piece of paper. You know what you're going to deliver. They know what they're going to deliver, how often, when, and what they're kind of getting paid for it. And that makes it quite clear. Having kind of nebulous boards of random people you've put together who don't really know why they're there, you don't really know why they're there either, can be quite time consuming. So number one is work out why you want an advisory board. Is it because you've got a skills gap? Is it because it might be helping you to raise finance? Is it because you are in a sector that you've got a great idea, but you don't fully understand it? So they can help you with networks, product development, understanding the kind of the sector and building your own networks actually. So think very carefully about who they are and why you want them, and then how many you want, because it can be quite difficult managing people sometimes, especially people that are, how do I put this nicely, have a high opinion of themselves because they've been, I've been in this sector for 30 years. You're kind of like, okay, well, great, but why aren't you starting this business then and shaking it up? So not everybody, because they've been doing something for 30 years, actually can actually add any value because they don't really understand what you're talking about. So write down literally why do I want a board? What are they going to do? What value are they going to add? What do I expect from them? What can they expect from me? How often are we going to meet or communicate? And how often is it going to go on for? And structure it professionally and formalize it. It's just like it's like having a mentor. People say to me, I want to get a mentor. Will you be my mentor? Being a mentor can be it can be something that goes on for a lifetime. It can be something that changes lives. So even when you're looking at a mentor, actually, you want to think about, well, why do I want a mentor? How often are we going to meet? What do they get out? What do I get out of it? And how long is it going to go on for? And put a timeline on it so that you all understand exactly what you're getting out of it. Because otherwise, you're just going to put a lot of time and effort into a talking shop. Now, having said that, I'll be slightly negative. If you find the right people and you've got the right structure, then they can shortcut your business. They can reduce the risk, which is what these people are really doing. They can accelerate your progression and they can reduce the risk because they'll stop you from making obvious mistakes that you probably are going to make that you don't need to make. But again, whether you call them advisory board, non-exec directors, it might be some investors that have some background in the industry. Just structure it properly and formally and think about it. Don't just add random people because they're available. Going back to my first question that I answered. Mark, how often do I do these sessions? Well, I'm supposed to be every week, and I have been doing it. I have to say, I was moving last week, so I was moving my dark cupboard down south. So I've just put it all back together. So I do these every week, like probably Wednesday or Thursday. And I'm just trying to, build an audience. I quite enjoy it. I find it quite cathartic and just talk to people. I do lots of sort of Q&As with other people on different platforms as well. But it's quite nice to just do my own. I don't really care if I'm sitting here talking to one person. Actually, I quite enjoyed it. It works, and I feel as though afterwards, people are quite reticent sometimes of asking questions. But afterwards, it's great to see their feedback on LinkedIn or especially on LinkedIn, where people sort of DM me and say, thanks very much. So do follow me, and please do sign up at moblox.com. Right, how long have we got left? We've got about 8 minutes. Yeah, let's carry on from Joe here. What is Joe on Twitter? What compensation models would you propose for NEDs advisors? Good question there. So you've got to be well, okay. Depends where your business is at, doesn't it? So if you've got a business that's got customers and revenues, and again, going back to the question about advisory boards, be very, very clear in terms of why you want these people on board and what value they're going to add. Now, there might be, if you're in fintech or the finance sector, you might need to have some kind of governance. From a regulator perspective, be good to have people on board. Your investors might want to have non-execs on board. So they might, even when investors say to you, I want to put somebody on your board, don't just say, yeah, okay, fine. Just let me know what the name is. Vet them, talk to them, meet them. Say to your investor, you know what, I really want you to invest. It'd be fantastic, but I just don't think he or she is the right person for this board. Have you got any other ideas? So take it very, very seriously. And then you've got to look at, right, how can I compensate people to be creative? Now, I'm always one where, in the big company game, if someone's really a non-exec director and they're going to be objective, they don't really have shares in the business. Now, you'll find that in some non-execs, I'm looking at a few now myself actually, and small businesses where you want some kind of equity linked upside because you're adding a lot of value. Why shouldn't you share the upside? So number one is, can you pay people? Because sometimes you don't want to give away shares because that's gold dust. You either just pay them a fair ration for what they're doing, and they do their bit, and then off they go. If they're adding real value and you want to offer them some kind of option scheme, you can do that too. But I always say with anything that's equity linked is get a good lawyer, make sure you structure it well, and make sure that if things don't go to plan, that you can take it off them. That's the key to it. If you're not paying them and they're getting shares in your business, and finding out, now the thing about shares as well is I always find where you say to somebody, oh, well, maybe I'll give you some options. Like, okay, great. Well, okay, 1%, 5%, 10%. They always start with round numbers. It's frustrating. So you got to almost set a valuation in your business. I think my company's worth this, or maybe if you're that kind of company. You've raised some money which tells you what you're currently worth in terms of at least an implied valuation. And you say, okay, well, you're going to be doing, I don't know, call it, I don't know, 1 day a month. I'm going to pay you 5, 10, 15, 20, up to 20, even 30K in some cases. I can't pay you all of that. So I'm going to pay you this much. I'm going to give you the rest in options. You can say, you've then got a benchmark about, okay, well, if it's say £10,000, for example, I've got a valuation. You can then say, well, 10 over the valuation is this kind of grant. And you might say that, okay, well, I can grant this many options to you. My share price is X, it's £10,000 worth. Divide that by the share price, gives you how many options. And then you say, okay, hang on a minute. These are going to vest over 3 years. So if after, I'm not going to give them all in year one, on day one, and you decide that you don't like the cut of my jib and you're off and you take the options with you, they're going to vest. And if you do something stupid, embezzling funds or, gross misconduct, or they don't adhere to their fiduciary duties, you can cancel them as well. So think about that very, very carefully. It's not just about how you incentivize people. It's about how you get out of a relationship as well if it all goes a bit wrong. I've got an important person here now, Tom Davis from Escape Conversions. I've got to be nice to Tom because he's doing my van conversion, and I want it to work. I like the brakes to work and the water to work as well, especially the solar panels. Hello, Tom. If I was to find an investor to scale my business, how much guidance input, if any, do they have in the business? Or does that vary with different investors? So this is the range. So it depends upon what you want and also what the investor wants. Now, in an ideal world, in the perfect world, you find somebody who wants to invest. I mean, Moblox, right? My business, yeah. So my new chairman actually invested, and he's been fantastic because he understands that sector. And he's introduced me to great people as well. So you want ideally someone who can add value as well as invest. Now, that's not always the case. And what you'll find sometimes is that people might add value for the first few months and then they go quiet and you never really hear from them again, but they've got shares in your business and that's fine. So I'm always of the view that start with the investment and start with the shareholders agreement. What you don't want to do is to raise finance from somebody and they may only get 5, 10, 20% of your company. And when you read the small print, actually, you lose control of your business. I've got people who build a business. I know they got it to 12 million valuation. I think they raised 6 million, took about 2 million quid out each, which is great. But within 6 months, they didn't work there anymore, and they had all their shares taken off them, and they've been fired. So read the small print, because I always say when I'm investing in companies that if I ever need to get that shareholders agreement out of a drawer and read the small print, then something's gone horribly wrong. So make sure that contractually you're covered, that there's no funnies in there, there's no huge preference. Often UK investors want to get EAS, so you can't have a preference. It's got to be kind of ordinary shares. Consent rights, veto rights, rights to board seat, rights to observers, rights to information, all this kind of stuff to make sure that you're happy with the deal you're getting into. And then the question is, can they then add value? And how long are they going to add value for? If they can add real value, you get back to the previous question, which is about, do they become an advisor or non-exec director? So actually, there's a cadence of communication. They're receiving information about the business. They're responding to it, a board pack, for example, and you're meeting and talking to them, once a month or maybe once every 2 months. So there's a spectrum, but you're in your business for a decade. You've got to be careful when you're bringing people into your business at that level, that they really are bought in and that they're inside the tent and they're there for the long run. And even if they're not, because it have to be, is that the structure and the contract you've got deals with it, should they choose to leave. But at the end of the day, money is money. Money is a commodity. You should never, if you can at all help it, take money off somebody who's trying to pull a fast one on the contractuals, because that will always end badly, because they're telling you something about their modus operandi and it's probably not a good one. So I hope that's helpful, Tom. But we can talk about that offline as well. Shut up, dog. That's my multi-poo. All right, let's have a look. I've got a few more minutes. I'll do 1 or 2 more. Joe. Twitter. I'm about to raise a round for co-founder and to go full time. How do you feel about the founder's salary? Oh, I'm not entirely. Your question's not clear, but I'm getting the gist of it. So raise a round for co-founder. No, we'll go, yeah. So number one is you've got to ask yourself, do you need a co-founder? I'm sorry to rain on your parade. Um, but are you raising around to recruit somebody, or are they taking risk? And again, I haven't got the details right, but what deal are they getting? So people, the way I look at things is people build, joining my business, Moblox. I kind of look at how much risk are they taking. So there's some people that are joining that have left very, very well-paid jobs. In fact, they're earning far more than I'm paying them to join the business because they believe in it. They've worked with me before, and I find that something which is they're taking risk. They don't have to. They actually, one of them had left his business, his employer. They offered him 100 grand more to stay. So, but and I think when he explained to them he was that's leaving for less money, it kind of took that kind of chip they had off the table. So one is about how much risk are they taking, and what's the deal, and then you don't really, really want to be doing a round on how big your business is just to fund a co-founder. Ideally, you want I'm being quite harsh here. You want your co-founder to join and put some money themselves. Now, you might not have money. Not everybody has. But how much risk can they? How far can they get without earning money or having a earning less? So I think the risk reward equation will tell you a lot about a person and about a co-founder. And be very careful about how your definitions. Are they a co-founder or are they employee number 4? So think about that because there's a massive difference between the two. And even if they are joining after you've started the company, after the event, and they're a co-founder, and they're taking shares or options, again, they should vest. And if they don't deliver or they leave within a certain period of time, then they should lapse or be taken off them at nominal value. So structure it very carefully. Equity is gold dust, and make sure that somebody can't just go running off with it for no good reason. Both of us, TK. Okay. Oh, here we go. Last question. Is it Kashif? Having built a business that has worked in its sector, however, I want to become a household name for this sector. Can I ring fence existing business shares and still be credible? Again, I'm not entirely, these questions aren't coming through particularly clearly. Getting investment from an investor. Right. So this might be what you're asking. It might not, but there's an interesting point you've raised there. I think for small businesses is that I'd actually heard it the other day, and I was on a Clubhouse call yesterday on Tuesday actually, and somebody asked a question which was, "I've got this great business, and I want to raise some money for it, but then I want this other part of the business, but I don't want the investors to be involved in that." And I was kind of like, "You're having a laugh, pal." If I was an investor, I'd run an absolute mile from somebody that said that I'm going to use your money to create some know-how, some intellectual property, a brand, or even your own profile, and then I'm going to leverage it in other ways that you don't get involved in. I don't think so. So you got to be, you can do it. You just got to be absolutely 100% crystal clear that somebody's investing in this particular part of the business, or you, or whatever it might be, or this brand, and that's what they're investing in. And that any value that's created from that investment, from that brand, in any way whatsoever, they get to share in. Now, you might say to them that I'll give you a bigger share of this business, but I don't want you involved with the other business. So you can obviously play with the economics, but I think you've got to be crystal clear about it, because investors will get very upset very, very quickly if they. In fact, you might find contractually often in your shareholder agreements or even your employment contract that you can't do this anyway. You're restricted. You have to focus on the business that they've invested in, and they're very, very common clauses in both shareholder agreements and employment contracts. In fact, you might find them in both. And that could be non-compete, non-solicit, non-poach, and they can be, and under UK law at least as well. These kind of clauses in employment contracts are kind of enforceable. You can argue against them sometimes if it restricts you from doing what your core skill happens to be, how you normally earn a living. But when they're in shareholder agreements and you received investment, then they usually are binding. So to be careful about trying to be. It's not aimed at you, chefs. It's a general point here. Be careful about trying to be too cute with what you do with people's money, if they think they're involved in everything you do. Now, clearly, if you're investing in your, I don't know, your puppy, your dog grooming parlor, and they're aware you've got a side business that's, I don't know, property, and clearly there's no connection between the two, and there shouldn't be. If you've got your poodle parlor and you realize, actually, I'm gonna set up under the same name or similar name some poodle shampoo, and they're going to be quite upset if they find that they're not involved in that. And he said that because there's a poodle sitting right next to me, a multi-poo, so that's why that particular one came up. So I think I'm going to leave it there. Adam Booth, thank you. Adam, you know what? I actually quite enjoy it. I quite enjoy it. It's cathartic. It's good to just talk to people, because what I find the most, and I'm not going to sell my course, but I did make one, is that a lot of these questions, they come up again and again and again and again. And I'm always surprised that, given the fact you've got the internet and YouTube and all this stuff, that all these answers just aren't out there, and they're not, because what you tend to get sold is a load of some BS sometimes, or a course, or whatever the hell it might be, or there's not people are talking about being in business and building business, being an entrepreneur, and they've never done it, and that annoys me the most. Actually, they never actually built a business. You know, they might talk about, oh, I'm in property. It's not the same thing. They built an operational business with the products and services and people and customers. That's quite different. And they never made all the mistakes. And too many entrepreneurs and small business owners, they make mistakes that they don't need to make. But the reason I'm here and I've got my branding here is that I want to build a business that is completely fun, a community that is completely focused on helping small businesses, focus on UK small businesses for the moment, on embracing technology and the modern tools that are out there, so you can be more successful, because they're there, they're powerful, and we're not using them. So one thing you can do for me is go and join the community at Moblox.com, sign up, and I'll be writing you all a newsletter tomorrow, which I better start thinking about, actually, because I've said most things I was going to say in this live chat. So so if I repeat myself, don't be too awful about it. But thank you. Thanks for coming. I'll probably do another one of these, I don't know, probably next Wednesday, Thursday. But that is it for now. Thank you.